are familiar with her. If you're a native to Central Pennsylvania, she is a phenomenal speaker. So Flora, take the lead.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me this morning. I really feel honored and privileged to be with you. And again, I want this to be very casual. I tried to create this very casual fireside chat atmosphere. So just relax and feel comfortable. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about myself. My parents are Italian immigrants. And I came from very, very humble beginnings. I'm not ashamed to tell you that we were poor. And that's just the way it was. My father worked several jobs. My mother made my clothes. She made my clothes through eighth grade. And I finally got a job so I could afford to go out and buy my own clothes because I didn't want that anymore. And my father grew a garden in the backyard. And that's how we got our food. Again, very humble beginnings. I went through high school and college, and I knew from a very, very young age that I wanted to be in broadcasting. I wanted to be a journalist. I don't know how I knew that, but I just did. And my mother said I used to walk around the house when I was a little girl with a hand brush in my hand as though that were a microphone. The big thing is, though, I had a Pittsburgh accent. It was horrendous. I would say things like Danton and up air and sandwich. So when I went to college, I did not major in journalism. I majored in speech communications because I really needed to get rid of that Pittsburgh accent. I worked all over the place. I started my career in a very, very small town called Clarksburg, West Virginia. I moved on to Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I worked in Wilkes-Barre. I worked in Philadelphia at 6 ABC. If anybody here is from Philadelphia, you know WPBI. And then I ended up in Harrisburg working at the ABC affiliate. Um, Long career. I'm one of those people that I keep track of everything. And for some reason, I started keeping track of all of the newscasts that I anchored. And over my career, I anchored 10,000 newscasts. I covered hurricanes, floods. I flew in a MiG-29. I've interviewed presidents. I have been everywhere and I did everything. And a few years ago, my broadcasting career came to an end. It was not my choice. And I had to do something that we're all having to do right now. I had to pivot. 3 years ago, I had to pivot. And so I feel like I put the P in pivot a couple of years ago. And I had to figure out what was next, what I wanted to do. And so I am now, I have my own podcast. It's called Chick to Chick. It is a video audio podcast. It's all over social media. I am the senior multimedia specialist for a website called penwatch.org. And we focus on Pennsylvania news, a lot of consumer news, news you can use. I also do PR work and I do corporate videos as well. So I pivoted and I had to figure out what was next. And that's where I am right now. When you talk about high stress, I don't think there's anything more high stress than working in a television newsroom. I mean, the minute you wake up in the morning, you feel like you have a gun to your head. You have a deadline because you've got to start working to get ready for the noon news. The minute you're done with that, there are more deadlines. Then you got to start working on the 5, and then you got to start working on the 6. It just continues. The stress level is unbelievable. And even, when you walk out of the door in the evening when your shift is over, there were times when there was breaking news and I had to go back in. So it doesn't end. You have to work weekends, holidays, morning, noon, night, middle of the night. There were so many times that I would get called out at 3 o'clock in the morning because there was a fire or, there was some sort of other event going on. It's constant and it's all day. And in television news, unlike, working in a company, to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, you have to jump from market to market, which is what I did. I started in Clarksburg, West Virginia, which is the 180th television market in the country. It's very, very small. And then when I moved up to Johnstown, I jumped to 80. And then when I moved to Wilkes-Barre, I jumped to 45. And then I made it. I got to Philadelphia, which is the fourth largest television market in the country. And really, from Philadelphia, the next stop is the network. So I was ecstatic. I had made it. I was working for the number one affiliate, the number one ABC affiliate in the country. And as I had mentioned, if any of you are from Philadelphia, you know, PBI, WPBI, 6ABC is a monster. And their slogan was the big story on Action News tonight. And I had that big story. I had it all the time. I was all over the place. I was reporting on major stories across the country, traveling everywhere. As I had mentioned, I covered hurricanes. I was in Florida. I was in Langley when that first wave of fighter jets came back from the Gulf War. I've been all over the place. Life was good. Life was good. But, you know, sometimes professional success comes at a price. I was working 12 to 14-hour days. Well, most of the time that I was working in Philadelphia, I was living here in Harrisburg. So I was driving 4 hours a day, 2 hours there and 2 hours back on top of a 12 to 14-hour day. I missed holidays. I missed weddings. I missed parties. I had to cancel vacations. I was living in hotels a lot of times. I might have been in a hotel for 4 days. I'd come home for 2, unpack, repack, you know, and then leave again. And this went on and on and on. And now here's the big part. I loved my job. I loved my employer, but I didn't necessarily love my life. You come to find out that money does not make you happy. And I was missing that work home life balance. It was just work, 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 work. And when I would come home, I would do chores and then I would pass out and fall asleep. I felt like I was kind of a gerbil, you know, on one of those round treadmills that I just kept running and running and running and running. And I'm like, I'm not getting anywhere. And the enjoyment that I had, I wasn't really enjoying my life. You know, I remember going to the movies and falling asleep. I remember going to see The Lion King on Broadway, and I fell asleep during The Lion King. I mean, who falls asleep during a Broadway show? And my friend looked at me and she said, "Boy, that was the most expensive nap you ever had." But that's where I was. Professionally, I had it all, but personally, it just wasn't there. And at that point, that's when I had that aha moment. I was missing something. I was missing something important. I wanted to live and I wanted a life. And so at that point, I had to hit pause and I really had to reassess my life. And I thought to myself, what do I want my life to look like? And could I achieve that life working in Philadelphia? And if I couldn't, what had to change? And that's what hit me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks that, again, I loved my job, I loved my employer, but I wasn't going to be able to have that life that I wanted that had balance in it by working in Philadelphia. There was no room to move up and no room to grow because people stayed there for 20, 30 years. Why wouldn't you stay there? It was a great place to work. My boss was fabulous. It was wonderful, but I knew my hours were not going to change. And it wasn't my employer's fault. It's just the nature of the business. So I had to make a change for me to get that work-life balance. At that point, when I was really struggling and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do here? The ABC affiliate here in Harrisburg came to me with an opportunity. And they said, listen, you're going to have set hours. You're going to work Monday through Friday. You're going to work 10 to 6, no weekends, less traveling, no overnights. And when I heard all of that, I was able to envision now the life that I wanted. I was able, because part of that was I wanted to be able to start a family and I wanted to have kids. And I'm thinking, how am I going to be doing this, traveling all over the place? So I decided to take that job. And this was a huge, huge moment. And this is the way I define this. I say to myself that I took a professional demotion because Philadelphia was the 4th largest market in the country, and Harrisburg is the 45th largest market. So it is a step down in terms of working in a television market. But the way I like to describe it is that I took a professional demotion for a personal promotion. This is what I needed to do. I needed to make that change to achieve that balance because my life was out of whack. My personal private life was down here and my work was up here. I didn't have any balance. And so I did this to even the scale. I took a professional demotion for a personal promotion. I'm not going to lie to you. The first day that I walked into work, I thought I was going to throw up. I thought to myself, what have I done? I just left. I was at the top of my career. I left this incredible job at this incredible station with this incredible employer. What did I do? What have I done? Did I throw it all away? And in fact, I didn't. I didn't throw it all away. I made some tough choices to get that balance that I wanted, that I needed to do so that I was able to have a child. I was able, to have that family and the life that I had envisioned. I felt blessed because I was close to my son's work. I was able to attend parties at his school. I was able to attend his soccer games. I was able to do all of those things to get that balance. Something else that I did for me, and I felt like I needed to do this, is because I went to my employer and I said, this is what's going on in my life, because I actually had a personal change at that moment. Nobody likes to talk about this, but my son was 2 years old and my marriage started to fall apart. And ultimately, I ended up getting divorced and I was a single parent. And again, the nature of news, you get called out at 3 a.m, you get called out on weekends. I couldn't do that with a 2-year-old. So what I thought was very important is that I went to my employer and I was very transparent. And I told him what the situation was. And I wasn't asking for special treatment, but I was clear about what was going on in my personal life. And I felt like I needed to set limits and boundaries with my employer so that I could maintain that balance at home, now being a single parent. And I was blessed that they understood the situation and they respected the situation so that I was able to do what I needed to do, again, to keep working and to continue with that balance that I wanted to have. As I had mentioned earlier, 3 years ago, big change, my broadcasting career came to an end and I had to pivot. And this required another big change. I was no longer working in the newsroom and I had to reinvent myself. And I was really, really struggling at that time. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? And my father used to say this to me when I got divorced. And I was really struggling then. And there were days when I couldn't get out of bed. And he said to me, you're not the first person to get divorced, and you're not going to be the last person to get divorced. Now get up and get out of bed and figure this out. He said, you have 3 days to figure it out. Now get up. And so when I lost my job, although my father had passed away, I heard him in my head. I heard him say to me, you got 3 days to throw yourself a pity party. You're not the first person to lose your job. You're not going to be the last person to lose your job. Now get up and figure it out. And so I figured it out. Started the website, as I had mentioned, penwatch.org. I have the podcast now, Chick to Chick, which is a video audio podcast. We're all over the place. And I am producing videos for so many companies, Capital Blue Cross, PSECU, law firms, whatnot. It's a lot to juggle. It is a lot to juggle. And with all of us now working from home in this pandemic, this is another thing that we have to figure out, this balance. For me, working on this website of penwatch.org, we are dealing with an unprecedented unprecedented amount of news. I have never seen anything like it. The amount of news that comes out every single day. Every day there are 3 to 4 news conferences. And because everything's virtual, similar to what we're doing now with all of these Zoom, like they never would do that before in the news business. You might have one news conference a day. Now they're having 3 or 4. And I really, really felt like I needed to be a part of every single one of these news conferences. I needed to be there. I needed to cover everything. And I found myself back in this bad situation, working from home. And when this pandemic started, that every day I was working like from 6 in the morning until midnight, every day, because I felt like I needed to be on top of it. I felt like it was my job to get this information out and to let people know what was going on. And this went on for a while. And again, I was back, although I had that balance, I was back like this. I was working, and I had no time for me. And, I think that we're all struggling with this, that when you're working in an office, you're able to sort of walk out the door at night and sort of shut off the computer and cut it off. And when we're all at home now, it's hard. It's really hard because you get up in the morning and you start working, and the day starts going by, and before you know it, you've been at your computer 10, 11, 12 hours, and you go to shut it off and you go, I've got one more email. I got one more, let me try to deal with that. Or you get a text and you want to deal with that. So the good news about working from home is that we get to work from home, but the bad news is you never seem to stop working from home. It can be 24/7 if you let it. And so you really need to stop. And again, I thought about this, I thought about what I was doing, and I had crossed my own boundaries and limits that I had set for myself to achieve this balance. So I had to make a change. Again, I had an aha moment with working from home. I stopped, as I said, attending every single virtual news conference. It wasn't necessary because the reality is, usually after the news conference happens, they send you a press release and then you can look over it. And if you have questions, then I can email whatever agency that is and ask them my questions. I stopped that and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to attend the really, really important news conferences that are going on. I scaled back on all of my social media posts. I felt like I'm only going to post the big stories. And I had this fear. I had this great fear that if I'm not on top of everything, I'm going to lose viewers. I'm going to lose readers. People aren't going to engage with me on social media. And none of that happened. None of that happened. People were still there. They were still engaged. So I put that limit on myself. The podcast also had gotten so out of hand. We come out with a new podcast every single Monday, and then we were posting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, posting pictures on the weekends. It had become consuming. And I said to my chick, who happens to be my co-host, I said, you know what? This is too much. It is too much. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating. So we scaled back. We decided to go, you know what? We're going to put the podcast out on Monday. We're going to put a teaser video out on Thursday about the following week's podcast and maybe a picture here and there. But we're going to scale back. And again, we had this fear. We had this fear that, oh, if we do that, people aren't going to listen to the podcast. They're not going to watch. But in fact, they still continued to watch. They were still engaged with us. Nothing changed. So I think the moral of what I'm saying is it's really not about quantity. It's about the quality of the work that you're doing. You don't have to get into this rat race that you're just pushing yourself all the time. It's not about the quantity. It's all about the quality. And by making these changes, I got time back for me. I was able to relax. I was able to clear my head. What also helps me is that I plan my days. I plan my weeks. I'm old school. I have a calendar in front of me. and I plan my weeks. So this helps me with my time management. Every day I have lists of things that I have to do, and that helps me with my time management. I also made some other changes too. If I start working at 7 o'clock in the morning from home, I take a break. I force myself to take a break. Maybe at 11, I'll go for a walk or I'll do something else. And then I'll continue to work, and then I'll take another break so that I'm not all consumed with this working from home situation, which can take over your life. Um, and, I also feel like it's okay if I don't work during the day, because maybe I'll just work in the evening when it's dark. Um, you have to set boundaries and limits again on yourself from working from home. And, if an email comes in and you don't deal with it until tomorrow, I think it's okay. It's okay if you do that. Something else that I have learned to do, and this may be hard for some of you because it was hard for me in the beginning, I've learned to say no. People ask me to do things all the time. They ask for my help. And I'm one of those people that I want to try to help everybody. But sometimes you have to say no. You have to say no for your own sanity. And it's your own time management too. And I'll give you an example of when I started to think about, is this a good use of my time? Somebody asked me to go to an event in Gettysburg. And they said, we're having this big event, we're having this big rally and whatnot. And we'd really love for you to come to this event and to come to this rally. And I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do there? Do you want me to speak? Or no, we really only need you for a minute there. We really need you to rally the crowd. We really need you to just say, hey, I'm here to kick things off. And I thought to myself, okay, it's an hour drive down. They're going to need me for 5 minutes, and it's an hour drive back. Is this really the best use of my time? And the answer was no. And it wasn't that I had anything against these folks or that I didn't want to help them, but sometimes you need to reassess things and take a look at things to figure out, is this really a good use of my time? And it wasn't. And so I have learned to say no, and it's okay. I promise you the sky is not going to fall. And the thing is, they come back. Even when you say no, they come back for other things. And, you just need to figure out what is the best use of your time. So for me, to get that balance, I needed to recognize what I needed to do to make changes in my life to achieve that balance. And as I had talked about, making that change in Philadelphia, setting boundaries and limits, I plan things, time management, and saying no are all important things to achieve that balance. I do think it's important to realize that you're not going to get that balance every single day. You're not going to get it on a daily basis. It doesn't exist. Sometimes you might put in 70% with your job and 30% with your personal life, but the next day it should balance out that personal gets 60 and maybe job doesn't get as much. So that in reality, it'll all balance out. It's not going to be a balanced situation on a daily basis, but you can achieve it. But you don't want the scales to be like this, the same way you wouldn't want a personal relationship or a friendship or anything else to be out of whack. If you're in a friendship and you're giving all the time and the person isn't giving back, you're going to reassess that friendship. And so you need to look at your job situation and your home life situation in that same manner to try to get that balance. It helps too to have a clear picture of what you want your life to look like. What do you want your life to be? And I had that clear picture of what I wanted my life to be. And if you know someone who has that clear picture, what are they doing? How are they achieving that? And try to do what they do to get that life. Something that I say all the time too is, I think it's important that we don't live in fear. I think fear can cripple your ability to make the right decisions for you so that you can have the life that you want. and I go back to Philadelphia, if I had lived in fear and I didn't make that move, if I feared leaving that job, I don't think I would have been able to achieve the work-life balance that I wanted. So don't live in fear, because it can cripple you, and it will cripple you in your ability to make the decisions so you can achieve the life you want and to have that balance. So, again, have a plan, learn to manage your time, and ultimately follow your heart to get the life and the balance that you want. So I hope I shed some light on some things, and I would love to take all of your questions. If any of you have any questions, you can ask me anything. I might not answer everything, but you can ask me anything you want. I'm an open book.
Thank you, Flora. If you don't feel you would like to verbally state your question, please do put it in the chat box. But recently, doing some homework before Flora's session as the moderator today, I actually came across an interesting study by Ernst & Young that was established in July 2018, which sparked my question. So of 9,700 adults, nearly half of these adults surveyed are working more than 40 hours a week. What employees really desire at the end of the day is flexibility and an opportunity for a better work-life balance. You know, the phrase flexibility in the workplace, expectation, can be interpreted in a million different ways. So my question to you, Flora, what benefits are focused on really desiring that work-life balance?
Flexibility is so important. And, as I had said before, the good news about working from home is that you get to work from home. And I'm a multitasker. I'm able to, we were joking before this Zoom started, but I'm able to do this and maybe start the laundry and start dinner and do other things. And I think that the pandemic has kind of been a wake up call and a bit of an aha moment that people are starting to realize that they want that flexibility in their life. They like being home, that they are able to do things. And so I do think that flexibility is really, really important. And I think that moving forward, we keep hearing when we return to this new normal. I think that this is going to be normal from here on in. I think that employers are realizing that, you know what, I can leave that employee and they can work from home. And not only are they being productive, but in many cases, they're being more productive because transparency. I did my hair for you guys this morning and I put on makeup, you know, and I'm actually out of my pajamas today. But yes, thank you. Most days I wake up and I get to work right away. I grab a cup of coffee and I start working immediately. And I think a lot of employers are recognizing that they're getting more out of their employees because, ladies, we're not wasting time fixing our hair, we're not putting on our makeup. And oh, that commute that is also so time consuming. So I think this is going to be not the new normal, but normal moving forward. And I think that we can really seize this opportunity to show our employers, not only am I productive, I can even be more productive because you're giving me this flexibility.
Thank you. We did have a question. Um, how how did your boss respond when you created those boundaries in order to stay home with your son?
Great question. He was very understanding. You know, it, I, I'm I've become a more open person. I used to be very, very private. Um, Again, full transparency. When my marriage fell apart, I didn't tell anyone because I felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. I felt like everything that I had done in my life, I was able to achieve. And now I failed at the most important thing. So I didn't talk about it at work. Nobody at work even knew that we were separated. So when I went to my boss, he was shocked. He had no idea because I kept going to work and I didn't say a word. And he thanked me for being honest. He thanked me for being transparent. And, he said, I completely understand where you're coming from. And so to make this whole thing work, I said, I want you to understand, I was in the situation like most divorced people. There were days that I had custody of my son and there were weekends when I didn't. And I said, listen, I'm going to let I have my son this weekend. I don't have him the following weekend. So if you need me, I'm available, but please understand when I have my son, I can't be available. And so because I presented something to him, I didn't say to him, hey, I'm done here. You can't call me. I presented an opening to him. I didn't focus on what I couldn't do. I focused more on what I could do. I'm like, this is my situation. This is where I am, but this is when I'm available. And so he really appreciated that. And it really helped with the boundaries and limits that I needed out of necessity. I mean, I can't run to a fire at 3 o'clock in the morning when I got a 2-year-old sleeping in the other room by himself. It's not possible. So, if it came down to it and I was going to have to make a tough decision about switching careers, it would have, that's a possibility too, but thank God it didn't come to that.
Thank you. Another question is, what is your suggestion for the best way to present a continuing work at home model to your employer when the world opens up?
Hmm. I think, I touched on that a little bit. I think you should focus on all of the things that you are doing and how you are more productive and how you can continue to get the job done. And, ladies, just add in that little, I'm not losing time doing my hair and my makeup, and you're not wasting time driving back and forth. And I think a lot of employers like to hear that, in fact, you are being more productive. I hear that over and over again from people that they feel less stressed when they know they have that flexibility in their life. And when an employer hears that you're willing to go the extra mile and you're willing to do these things, I think they're more open to allowing you to continue with the schedule that you have and stay working from home. But it's all about highlighting the positive things and how more productive and all of the things that you're able to do from home that maybe you weren't able to do at the office.
Thank you. We as event professionals are not strangers to change or taking on the newest projects. What are your recommendations on when saying enough is enough?
Mm. Yeah, I touched on that too. We have to learn to say no. We need to say, this is getting to be too much, and I need to scale back. That. I think everybody has their own individual tipping point and everybody has their own breaking point. Um, I, and I guess you have to get to that point on your own. As I had mentioned before, I was driving myself crazy. I was working from 6 a.m. till midnight every single day when the pandemic started. And I hit my breaking point. Um, my son had come home and he was in the house too. And I'm snapping at him and it was getting ugly. And I think that. I think that on your own when you hit that point and when you need to say enough is enough. And it starts, by learning to say no.
Thank you. And one question that came through is, what is your suggestion on incorporating employee feedback in the day-to-day operations to make it effective of the work-life balance model?
Okay, hit me with that one again.
What is your suggestion on incorporating employee feedback in the day-to-day operations for the work-life balance? Really, I feel this is coming if you don't feel comfortable in approaching the leader about the balance that is really needed in your life, how can really that leader actually address it in a sense for you, or at least hear their employees for the need of the balance?
Hmm. Again, it goes back to um, just focusing on the positive things that you're doing and what you're able to achieve at home, and making it clear that perhaps things are getting. I don't. My whole philosophy in life is you got to ask, right? It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst thing they're going to do is say no, and the best thing is you're going to get what you want. And you can get what you want by focusing on all of the positives and talking about everything that you're able to accomplish, and how working from home is good for everyone and benefits everyone. And that's another thing. Don't fear. I touched on that before. Don't live in fear. Approach your boss. Don't be fearful of talking to your employer. Don't be fearful of any of it. What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing? That they say no, but at least you tried, um, and you approached them and you were transparent with them.
Thank you. Can you share what kind of gender discrimination you experienced in your career and how you managed it?
Hmm. Well, ooh. So when I started in broadcasting, there was a joke that broads don't belong in broadcasting. This was many moons ago, and although the tide has changed a little bit, it's really it hasn't changed that much. Um, the thing that I faced early on in my career, and in fact, it really hasn't changed much, is the pay disparity. Um, and so I had situations where I was doing the same job as my male co anchor, and my male co anchor was making more money. And when I approached my boss, I mean, I went to task and I fought for myself. Nobody's going to fight for you other than you. You need to fight for yourself. You need to go after and verbalize what you want, what you deserve, and why you deserve it. And I went to my boss at the time and I said, so and so is making this, and I'm making a whole lot less. And it's not fair. We do the same job, we work the same hours. And my boss at the time said to me, well, he's the breadwinner. And I said, oh, what? What? And he goes, well, he's the breadwinner. He's got a family to support. And I'm like, first of all, what am I? I'm supporting my family as well. And what does that have to do with the job? What does that have to do with what I'm bringing to the table and my qualifications? What's that have to do with anything? Um, and so I was able to turn the tide by coming back at him and making it clear that my pay should not be based on whether I'm the breadwinner or not. That has nothing to do with anything. But I emphasized everything that I brought to the table. I emphasized all of the positives that I brought to the table, and why I was an asset to that particular organization. And I got a raise. It didn't bring my pay up, that there was pay parity there, but I did get a significant raise, and I started the conversation so that the next time salary was an issue, we didn't have to go through this anymore. Um, Nobody knows your story better than you. Nobody knows your situation better than you, and nobody should fight your battles better than you. You need to fight your own battles, and you need to make it clear your worth and your value. So that is the type of discrimination that I faced in terms of gender. I faced another type of discrimination too. When I started in the business, They didn't like ethnic names. They did not like ethnic names. My last name is Posteraro, very ethnic. And a lot of people that I worked with in the industry at the time were changing their names to Smith and Jones to try to get rid of the ethnicity. And there were jobs that I was offered, and they asked me to change my last name, and I refused. I said, nope, this is who I am. And if you don't like it, I need to stay true to me. And I lost the job, but I didn't lose my dignity and I didn't lose who I was. And I felt like this is who I am. Take me for who I am. And if I don't get this job, another job will come along. And that's in fact what happened. So stay true to yourself always.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on that existing question, um, just a comment, is that still happening still to this day?
Which
In regards to the like the shortening of the last name and then the ethnicity component of what you shared?
No, actually now it's hip to be ethnic. It's hip to be square. It's hip to be ethnic. And the irony is in many broadcast, in many television markets, they want you to be bilingual. There were jobs in Miami and they asked me if I could speak Spanish and I couldn't. So I didn't get that job. So the ethnicity part, it's now hip to be ethnic. And the pay part, I'm sorry to say, yes, in fact, it's still an issue. It is still an issue. Um, Most of the people in management in broadcasting are men. And although we do have more women in that role, it's still predominantly a male business at the top. And it's still a problem with the pay disparity.
Thank you. We have two more questions, and if there are any others, please do enter into the chat box so we can conclude today at 11 o'clock. The next question is, who are some of the people in your professional and personal support system?
Who are some of the people in my professional support system? There are people in my professional support system who are colleagues, either former colleagues at television stations that I worked all over the place. I am still in touch with many of them. It's funny because it's a big business, but it's small at the same time and it's very tight knit. And I still lean on a lot of these people that I worked with 20 years ago for support. I have a new crop of people now in my professional life since I pivoted and changed, who are part of the PR world, who are part of my support, and who's part of my personal support. I'm very loyal. I'm loyal like a dog. And I am still friends with my girlfriends when we were 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And this might sound ridiculous, and it is, but there were 4 of us who were thick as thieves, and we hung out all through high school. We still get together every year for a girls' trip. And the last girls' trip we went on was to Nemacolin. And now the current season of The Bachelor is being shot on location at Nemacolin. And every Monday night, they torture me for 2 hours. We FaceTime, all 4 of us, and watch The Bachelor together and go, hey, remember that? Hey, we took a picture there. Wait a minute, that wasn't there when we were there. So I have people in my life. I mean, I am loyal that go back many, many years from childhood. And of course, this is going to sound crazy, ladies. But my ex-husband is one of my biggest supporters. He has been there for me and he has helped me when my career changed. And, he said to me, despite our personal differences professionally, you are one of the hardest workers that I know. And so I will do anything I can to help you. And this is a little bit of a joke here, but we have this Chick to Chick podcast. It's the 2 of us and it's a video audio podcast. And we joke all the time that our 3rd chick is behind the camera who is shooting the podcast. And that 3rd chick, don't tell anybody, is my ex-husband. There's my support. More applause. So you can be friends with your ex.
Thank you for that. Last question before we wrap up today, Flora. Were there moments you saw the story or situation and thought, oh, I wish I was there, and reminded yourself that you made the right decision to move on?
There were moments when I looked at a situation, and to be current and relevant, hence the rioting that went on at the US Capitol, I looked at that situation and I went, I am so glad I'm not there. I am so glad I moved on. And even more relevant, this snowstorm. Ladies and gentlemen, there were days when I stood in blizzards for 16 hours, and I have 2 frostbitten toes to prove it. Um, and during this latest snowstorm, I looked at this and I thought to myself, I am so glad I'm not standing in this snow, in this blizzard, wind, cold conditions to tell everybody the obvious that it's snowing, because I know none of you realize that. I know none of you realized that it was snowing and the snow was piling up. And I just looked at that and I thought, I'm in my pajamas. I'm so glad I'm not doing that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the fireside chat and the Q&A today. I'm sure if anyone that is on, needs a reference to look back, this is a friendly reminder. We are recording today, so we will be sending that out via email. So we do have a giveaway today, so hold on tight, folks. Give me a second.